you're never going to be fulfilled and you're going to live a life of like doom and unhappiness, well, what's the purpose of life? You know, I used to pretend I had a guitar, but it was really a racket. And I'd be like, Granny, like, introduce me whenever there was like visitors, you know? And then she would like, here's Daphne, you know? And then I would come, and I give like a whole performance, you know what I mean? Actually, I think I went through like a process of existential crisis for like 6 years, going through from undergrad all the way to graduate school. And there are certain themes that began with sort of questioning core aspects or core theologies and ideologies that were sort of inculcated in me as a kid. One of the main things that when I went to catechism was like, you know, what's the chief end of man? Like, what's man's purpose? And they would be like, well, it's to glorify God, blah, whatever. You know what I mean? But at some point, you know, you go down through all that theology and you realize that sort of they depict humans as basically a empty vacuum. In order for us to be fulfilled, you have to sort of like humans sort of resort to any kind of diversion in order to be fulfilled. Well, I started making a few series of the 7 deadly sins in order for me to understand not only like different characteristics of human qualities, but also aspects of religion. Our core characteristic, for example, is to be lascivious, you know, like we're lustful, we like to be loved, we love to love, we get angry, we're envious, you know, we are prone to violence, all these things that are very intrinsic to us. And I mean, that whole questioning sort of gave way to that whole body of work. Yeah, well, I think I went through my existential crisis and now I'm past that. When I was thinking about the creation of this piece, I was like, well, what is a moment of my life that I feel kind of nostalgic about, you know, that I have really positive memories and also very kind of negative memories behind it. And going to Juilliard kind of, you know, I feel that there's a conflation of all those feelings. I was talking to you the other day about Greensburg and how he was one of the forefront critics that were pushing painting to be very flat, you know, like taking away so much of what I think painting has to do. And in that sense, my work is political because it's reacting against that. So my painting is not completely painting, my paintings are not completely sculpture, you know, they're like a hybrid of both. My work relates more maybe to the Baroque, like when you see the Baroque paintings or even high relief paintings, there's so much to do with space and like the relation of the between the viewer and the image that not only relates to actual picture plane, but how the viewer could be engaged. It kind of became like magical realism. Like if you think about, you know, Borges or Gabriel Marquez, the way they construct narratives. So, I mean, I guess my influences are not only visual, but also literary. I was introduced to this artist, Remedios Varo, and she makes these most intricate paintings of these pieces that are very psychologically charged. They're always like tunnels, or they look like churches or something. And then the characters are also like very psychological in the sense that they engaged in the world that, you know, that they're placed in, but they're very much separated from that world. And then there's this Venezuelan artist, Armando Reverón, and Antonio Berni, he's an Argentinian artist. I look at them a lot in terms of materiality, because they have the ability to transform, you know, everyday objects that are discarded and make something absolutely beautiful and novel with the objects that they collect. In Yale, there is an art store, but it's so expensive. It's like everything is double the price. So my art store became Home Depot, you know. And it was great because you have all kinds of construction materials that you would never think about using them as art supplies. It's a good way of it's a good way of approaching artwork. I feel like sometimes when you know all the answers of how to use a medium, you get limited because you're constrained by, well, I should use it this way. Like I said, like I use everything around me. I bought those flowers, I think for Mother's Day, and then I bought myself a bunch of flowers, and it's been here ever since, and I've been using it. Ignorance is bliss. When you have the ability of not knowing, you could really invent and play around with things. Torture, you know, like sometimes like not knowing what color, not knowing what to put in this corner. Like if you don't have a composition secure, then it's a little bit difficult. But after that, you know, I'm free to do whatever I want. These pieces are really playful. I mean, I'm in a more positive state of mind, so they kind of reflect that. I mean, and there's always things that, you know, you always put something down and you have to react to it. So it's a constant give and take when you make something. It's almost like a puzzle that you don't really know how it's gonna turn out until you see it.